Hi, my name is Bruce Bolger, and I'm founder of the Enterprise Engagement Alliance, and we're a 16-year-old organization dedicated to helping organizations of any type and size all around the world improve performance through a strategic and systematic approach on all their stakeholders. And we're all about how to. There are a lot of organizations promoting this stakeholder approach to management. We're really focused on the nitty-gritty. How do you make that happen in your organization? By integrating and aligning all of your various communications, learning, and rewards and recognition programs. And what we do in this program, Meaningful Meetings, is that we dive into corporate meetings, corporate events, because they're one of the most powerful engagement tools of all. And Jackie Basco, who helped us come up with this concept, and she's CEO and founder of Basco Talent, she's helped us put together a great series of programs with people like Ryan Pyle, who you're going to get to meet in just a few minutes, to help really give us an idea of how to bring our corporate events to the next level, to achieve our purpose, goals, and objectives. So I always like to thank our customers, and these are the various types of engagement solution providers who provide engagement services to organizations. And I always want to remind people that the Enterprise Engagement Alliance gives away a bunch of free information, and that you don't have to ever pay a dime to us to get access to a ton of our how-to information. And once again, I'm going to go back to that first slide before I shut it off to introduce you formally to Ryan Pyle. And he is indeed an adventurer and producer and leading, I think, for many an envious life. And Jackie Basco, who is really a legend in Las Vegas in terms of putting together events for more decades than I'm sure she cares to mention. So I am now going to remove this screen. And there, I think I see you all, and there's no screen, right? No, we're all good. So Ryan, I'm going to start with you. Ryan, you grew up in Toronto. It looked like you were going to have a wonderful life, grow up there. You go to the University of Toronto. You were probably a local basketball star. Uh, what was your purpose, goals, and objectives back then? And how have they changed?
Well, I think, growing up in Toronto, Canada, by the way, is a wonderful thing. It was a wonderful community to grow up in. It's a great city. My parents were awesome. Lots of support there. And I think, in those days, I guess my goals were really just to like finish what everyone expects you to do. Go to university, graduate, get a degree of some sort. And then, I was also an athlete at the time, so I was playing basketball for the University of Toronto. So again, being a good teammate, taking care of the team, practicing, giving 100%. But all of that started to seem a little repetitive and a little boring. And then, of course, once I was able to graduate and get my degree, and then I was no longer able to play basketball because I wasn't good enough to get to the next level. I was only able to play at the collegiate level. But then everything kind of just became really boring. And I was really looking for another challenge. Basketball had provided me with all of my challenges, at that point in my life. And when I started thinking about staying in Canada or staying in Toronto and working and starting a career there, I really didn't see a challenge ahead of me. So I think I was really looking to like shake things up. I really was looking for a lot of discomfort. I really wanted to like get out of my comfort zone and really expand my horizons of what is possible, not only for myself, but I wanted to see more of the world. So that was really what drove me to move to China when I was 22.
So what was that trigger then? One of the things we're interested in this show is the triggers that make big decisions. Was there one particular thing that happened? Or because Toronto's a great town. I live in New York City and I'm never bored in Toronto. The great restaurants, great food, international culture, plenty of Chinese people there as well. Was there a particular trigger, a girlfriend or a lover you broke up with, or was it just a culmination of things and all of a sudden an opportunity came to go to the University of Shanghai?
Well, I think moving to Shanghai was a big step, and I think the trigger for that was really the end of my sporting career as I saw it. So, I was 22 years old. I wasn't married or anything like that. I wasn't fired from a job I wasn't going through a midlife crisis or anything like that. I think the real trigger was not being able to play basketball anymore at a highly organized level, and like I said before, that sporting part of my life had provided me with all of the, you know, all of the opportunities that I had so far to push myself to achieve my goals and to do that. And then I didn't see a pathway for me to get those same kind of feelings in Toronto. Like, there was no one ahead of me in years or ahead of me by a few years who was doing anything that I was very interested in or that I thought was very compelling. So I thought like, wow, I'm going to have to make my own way here. And I think I'm going to need to go somewhere else to do it and really kind of break away from this idea of everyone just stays in Toronto, gets a job, gets married, and moves on, and that's their life. And I really wanted to shake that notion up, and really I just wanted to feel uncomfortable again. I wanted to I wanted to have goals. I wanted to see more of the world, and that really pushed me to get out of Canada and to start exploring the world. And then, of course, once I did, it just kind of opened up a lot of new exciting avenues.
So, one, can you tell us what made you decide to go to Shanghai? And what was that in the 90s when you were there, probably? Or,
No, no. So my first visit to China was in 2001, and I graduated from the University of Toronto in May 2001. And
oh, there it was. Okay.
yeah, and so the reason I went to China is very, very funny. When you play collegiate sports, you often play your games on the weekends, and you often have to travel on Friday, and you have a game on Friday night. So our coach was like, "Okay, guys, try to get Fridays off and try to arrange your classes because you're going to miss a ton of Fridays." And so I was trying to arrange my schedule at the beginning of the school year, so I had my Fridays off, and that meant that if I could keep my Fridays off, that meant I needed to take a class on like Tuesday at noon. And the only available class that I was interested in on Tuesday at noon was an introduction to modern China, and that was in my second year of university. So I took that class and I was blown away. The main text in that class was Introduction to Modern China by Jonathan Spence, which is a classic. And then I started reading more Jonathan Spence books. Obviously, he's written like I think 30 books about China. I started to get into Peter Hessler, who's another American author who's done a lot of great work in China. He was a New Yorker correspondent for many years. And I just started reading and reading and got interested. And then in my second year, I took that class. In my third year, I took another. And then I was like, well, you know what? I'm done school. I've done everything that everyone expected me to do. I have a little bit of money in the bank. I was really lucky. I worked, in the summers and stuff like that. And then I was like, I'm going to go do something for myself and challenge myself in a new and exciting way. And if it doesn't work out, I've always got, caring family behind and Toronto to come back to. But I was going to go out into the world and see if I could sink or swim.
And so, in a sense, your purpose, goals, and objectives at that time was to explore, to set yourself free. Nothing really more than that. And by the way, I've been to Shanghai. The food is amazing. You made a great choice. So let me ask you then, fast forward now, 24 years later. Folks, there'll be a write-up on his bio. You'll see all the cool things he's doing in television production and whatnot. We'll talk a little about that. But so how would you describe now your purpose, goals, and objectives 24 years later?
I think now, the real goal is to not settle. I think the real goal is to keep setting new goals, to keep finding those uncomfortable situations, to keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And that is the hardest thing I think to do as you kind of move into your 40s and 50s, because I think life starts to get a little comfortable. Maybe you've had some chance to make some money. Maybe, you have a home or you have a family or something like that. And for me, the real goal these days is to keep the hunger and to keep that desire to find those uncomfortable situations and to keep kind of telling stories about pushing myself through these parts of the world. So, it can be, a great example would be, sitting around in LA and where I am today and just, thinking about, wow, I've never been to like a rainforest and I wonder how we film in a rainforest. And then it's like, okay, where's a great rainforest that people don't really know about? Okay, Papua New Guinea. Okay, great. What's a good like 100-mile, 150-mile trek we can do through Papua New Guinea? How uncomfortable will it be? How scary will it be? How hard will it be? How safe will it be? And then it's just constantly trying to like push that envelope of what kinds of experiences can I go out into the world and accomplish or complete so that I can inspire people through my television show to get out and kind of chase their own discomfort or push themselves out of their comfort zone and have a real life experience. Because I think, when I left Toronto in 2001 at 22, I was really naive. Like I just didn't know anything about the world. And now I filmed over 50 hours of television shows all in countries all on every continent, and you see more of the world, and you get a little bit more wise, and you understand how things work, and it adjusts your perspective not only to how you see the world, but more importantly, I think, to how you see yourself and how you see yourself fitting into the world.
And that's a good segue, Jackie. So obviously, you recommended Ryan, and Ryan, we're going to get into some of the lessons that you've learned from discomfort, okay? And what you've learned from throwing yourself, and why you're a glutton for punishment and keep doing it. But before we do that, Jackie, what made you recommend Ryan?
Well, when Ryan contacted me for doing keynote speaking, I also noticed that he did television shows, which is one of my other companies and passion. And he talks about extreme leaders and accountability. And, I'm one of the last people to have hired Anthony Bourdain. And Anthony Bourdain made you live that experience that he was experiencing. And when I started looking at Ryan's TV shows, he takes you places that you feel like you're there that you've never been to. And that's what he does with his audience when he speaks. He widens their horizons and expands their visibility and things that they can do and things that you don't think that you can do that you can do. And I just find him amazing. And I'm so excited to be able to hire him as a speaker and share him with, all the meeting planners and incentive companies and things. He also does interactive things, which he can tell you about with people. He takes small groups of people to some adventures. So, no, I
Well, I
can't
want
say
to talk
enough
about
about him. I'm
that.
very excited about the speaking and his TV and working with him on a lot of different projects.
Well, Ryan, one of the things, and we'll get to, we are very, very big advocates for when you bring people to a country or to a city to get off the beaten track. And there's a lot, and we're going to get into that. But corporate social responsibility is a big thing, and it's a nice thing. They'll often have the groups pack up food, for disadvantaged people. But how about getting people out into the destination? Because when you do that, you help the economy of that destination and you give them an incentive to maintain their infrastructure. But we'll get to that. So thank you, Jackie. So what I want to talk about, Ryan, now is what are some of the key lessons you have learned from these experiences? I moved to a foreign country that spoke another language far more similar to our culture than China, and I found it that I experienced a homesickness the likes of which I have never imagined, and that was before the internet. And you were in China probably in the early stages. What are some of the biggest things takeaways that you've learned from taking yourself out of the norm, pushing yourself the limit, doing a trek in Mongolia? What are some of the takeaways that you want to share at corporate events?
I think one of the most important things is just to remember that at the end of the day, everything is probably going to be okay. I think a lot of us have a lot of anxiety and a lot of us have a lot of fear about new things or new places or new experiences that we have the opportunity to engage with. And I think there's a famous quote out there, like 85% of the things we worry about never happen. And going to China at 22 and not knowing anything really about the world, I just embrace that, like I'm like, okay, I know I'm a, well-educated person. I know I'm pretty tough, physically and mentally. Like, it's going to take a lot to break me. So I will be okay. And I think that, that was something I started just, uh, you know, speaking to myself in the mornings and in the evenings, as I was traveling all around China. I didn't just go to Shanghai, by the way. Like I went into China and I did a 90-day trip and I traveled all around China through on public transportation. So buses, trains, etc. And like not being able to figure out how to buy a bus ticket and taking, having it take 3 hours for me to be able to communicate what kind of train ticket I wanted and which direction I wanted to go in, east or west, all these kinds of things. But I was just like, it's going to be okay. I'm going to figure this out, and not really giving up, but also having belief and trust in your own abilities. And then once you start to have belief and trust in your own abilities, the sky is really the limit. Like, then you can take, once you feel comfortable traveling in China, then you can go to another country. Like what's Russia like, or what's Kazakhstan like, or what's India like? And always knowing that no matter what the next challenge is going to be, you've already accomplished something somewhere else that's a little bit similar. And you just kind of roll these experiences together. And I think we're all a lot more confident than we let on. And I think there, there's a lot of anxiety and fear in all of us. And I think travel helps us become a better version of ourselves. And that's something I realized actually right when I was 22. I think we're different versions of ourselves with different people. In a corporate environment, we're one way. When we're with our friends, we're another way. When we're with our parents, we're another way. When I was traveling, I was the best version of myself. I was humble. I was inquisitive. I was constantly learning. I was 100% engaged in where I was and what my environment was and the people I was with, and I was fully present. And that's the part of me that I liked the best. I loved myself as a basketball player. I loved myself as a student. But that was the bit that really kind of set me on fire emotionally, mentally, physically. And I really wanted to keep pushing that. So that was a really important thing for me to do, is just know that I was going to be okay, knowing that existing in this space, in this country, not being able to speak, this is actually a skill that's transferable, and that I can do this anywhere in the world now. And just building that confidence up slowly, brick by brick.
Now, the lesson I would think also for audiences is that, this all sounds glorious, but I happen to know I haven't traveled as rugged as you have, but I've traveled a lot, and there are bad times. I remember being out in the wilderness, very sick, very ill, and I still had to get to an appointment. It's a long story, but I was in the middle of nowhere in France and vomiting, and I had to get to knee, blah, blah, blah. You've been there. Okay. You've been on that. Isn't it ironic? Tell me what you think. Those awful nights, and I'm sure you had many of them where you got sick in some bizarre place in a cheap hostel somewhere, not even knowing how to
Yes.
get medicine, and it looks really bad, and maybe even for a moment you feel like dying. But let me ask you, isn't there a benefit to having gone through that when you look back at it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like when you grow up in Toronto, Canada, you can have a wonderful like middle class life, and I did have that. And again, caring family, and I had the chance to go to university, but I wasn't living on the edge enough, and there was something about living on the edge that was quite exciting. And when you're in China, in central China, in some terrible hostel having food poisoning or something like that, and it's all working through you, and you feel miserable, and you're like, I wish I just stayed home in in Toronto. But actually, that idea is gone, and just as fast as it came into your head, because you're like, no, I can't do that. I'm out here. I'm living my life. I'm exploring. I'm learning something new every day. And as bad as it is tonight, tomorrow's a new day, and tomorrow's a better day. And again, it's just having that confidence to know that, like, again, it's going to be okay. Like, discomfort is okay. And I think, when I do the talks, and I speak to, corporate people all around the world, one of the things I try to tell them is, chasing, exiting your comfort zone, doing things that are new, uh, challenging yourself. These are the things that will make you a leader in a big group or a small group, and these are the things they'll build up your own self-confidence. And you have to look for these opportunities. Like I wasn't kidnapped and put on a plane at 22 and sent to China. Like, I had to plan it. I had to buy a ticket. I had to work for it. I had to save up some money. Like, there's a process to this. And I think a lot of people are very complacent. Like, they might have an interest in leaving their comfort zone and trying something new, and all this, but you have to take that first step. And if you're not willing to take that first step, nothing interesting in life is going to happen. So, you really have to get out there, and you really have to kind of have a plan. And that was really what my early experiences taught me, is just plan out some crazy adventure, and go and execute it, and see what you look like afterwards. Is it something that made you a better human being? Is it something that made you more confident? Is it something that made you feel terrible, and you don't ever want to do that again? Because I think a negative response is also a response. Like, that's value, right? Knowing that you don't want to do that again is just as valuable as knowing that you want to do that again. But the point is, most people don't even give themselves a chance to realize that. They're just, everyone's kind of stuck in their own little comfortable cocoon, working away all day, and they're not kind of thinking about anything that's next, or thinking about how to improve themselves, or how to change their perspective on things. And I think that, travel, and especially adventure travels, that really does, light a fire inside you in a lot of different ways. And I think it can be really positive for a lot of people, especially time in nature. That's obviously one of the most important things.
Well, maybe we'll have a minute to talk about that too.
Mm.
So getting back to these lessons, though, when you've isn't it so that when you've gone through this hell, okay, at that moment, and you've survived it, doesn't that give you muscles to survive other things? Doesn't it, in a sense, and this is something for anyone who wants to be a leader to remember, that awful moment, like there was probably a horrible day when you were 21, when it became apparent you weren't going to be in the big leagues in basketball, right? You might have made, and by the way, folks, there's a very bit different type of success you've had than as a basketball player, right? In my town, if you were a basketball player and you were a good one, you had all the gals, the whole thing. You were the star, you had a big group, you had your social life set, and then you went off to be a loner, right? There's no spotlights on you when you're well, now there is, of course. When you're in Tibet with the trek, you have the cameras, so you do. So I think one of the really exciting lessons from all of this, folks, is that one of your worst days in life can actually create your whole future, right? Because all
Yeah,
of a
I
sudden you
think
had to
that's
make a change.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. Like, I think your darkest days lead to your best moments, and it's not going to stay dark forever, right? So, trying to work your way through that and wait for things to change on the other side is also important. Again, it's just knowing things are going to be okay. Like today is going to be terrible. Maybe things will get better tomorrow. If it's not tomorrow, it'll probably be the next day. And yeah, it's funny. I've never heard anyone explain it quite like you just did about being, going from having a community of being a basketball player and having people around, your teammates, friends, fans, whatever, to being a loner. And that's exactly what I did. And I think that was just it was just time to try something new, really time to change something. And one of the things I think that we don't give ourselves enough time to do as a society, and maybe different companies have different work environments or things like this, but we don't give ourselves like enough time to be alone. Because when you're alone, you really reflect on who you are and what you want and your goals and your life and your ambition. But when you're constantly surrounded by people telling you how great you are, and I live in Los Angeles, so that can be very dangerous as well. You get really complacent, like, oh, you're a great basketball player, why would you leave? Oh, you make great television shows, why would you leave LA? Like, blah blah blah. And it's like, because you need to keep progressing, you need to keep exploring, you need to keep figuring out, what's the next thing you're going to do, what's the next place you're going to try to understand, what's the next story you're going to tell. And kind of breaking away from that complicity is really important. But knowing when you're falling into it is hard. And I think, when at the top of this conversation, you asked me like, what are my priorities today versus my priorities when I was 22, or what have I learned? And really breaking away out of this, comfort cocoon, or this complacency that we all kind of live in when we live in big cities and in first world countries, is not getting too comfortable and remembering that you still have to get out, and tell stories and explore and learn, because I think learning is the real, thing that underpins all of these experiences.
So, Jackie, apparently Ryan has a career that we would all envy. As I understand it, one of the things you do, and this is maybe something could you do for a corporate event? Let's say, for instance, somebody hired you for Vegas. Well, as you know, there's an amazing state park not far from the two of them, not far from Vegas. I think Red Rock and then Petroglyph Canyon or whatever. If we wanted to really take people out for a little soft adventure, with our event in Vegas. Is that something you could do?
Oh my God, absolutely. I love going out to Red Rock and climbing. And I've got a lot of friends that do it. And there's a lot of really professional, amazing climbers that live in the Las Vegas area. And I would love to come into Vegas and have the chance to talk in front of an interesting and motivated group of people, and then, take them out for a rock climb. Get
And
them
it might
get
have
them
to be a
dirty.
soft rock climb, but there's a place in that canyon in Red Rock, by the way, a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know, but there's an ancient barbecue pit that the Native Americans used, and it has the most spectacular view. And when you sit at sunset, and of course the sun's setting in the opposite direction there, but when you sit at sunset and you lean back, you realize the sandstone was worn down by 1,000 years of Native Americans having a barbecue pit there. There's so many spiritual things there. Jackie, do you think that, and we're going to finish up with you in a minute, Ryan, but I want to get Jackie's thoughts on this. Ryan is going to tell us some in a minute, hopefully, some of the interesting ways you can be more interactive. Do you think meeting planners are getting more interested in that? Maybe even creating a soft little adventure experience next to an event in Vegas. Do you think people are more receptive to that now?
Absolutely, because I think hiring somebody like Ryan who talks about stepping out of your box, beating your fear. And I'm a person that has been controlled by a lot of fear my whole entire life, and I had to step out of my box. I remember I took the river raft tour, and I went with a group of my people, including my staff, and I was panicked because I don't swim, and in my head already I'm drowning in the water. And they forced me and embarrassed me to do it. And I went on it, and it's the best thing I ever did. I beat a fear. I beat a fear, and I had an adventure. And hiring Ryan, not just as a speaker, but taking them out on an adventure with a real adventure person is incredible. It's exciting. And he encourages people to step out of their box and to beat that fear or do something that they enjoy, but they're having their own adventure and learning another adventure. Andrea Doyle, of all people, she's like my hero. You know, she walked Mika Picchu. She's been climbing mountains. I mean, she does everything. I have to hook her
Andrea
and
Doyle, by
Ryan
the
up.
way, is editor of Skift meetings, or executive editor.
I have to introduce you. She's an adventure person. She always is, you know, she has no fear. And having no fear and releasing that fear is everything. And I totally respect you, Ryan, for what you do. I love it.
So Ryan, and I know that you're running out of time here, and you've made an exciting living. You are now taking people on treks. You know, I believe they're around 100-mile treks, and then filming them and then making them available on your cable shows. Could you quickly tell us what you're doing right now?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think, breaking out of your comfort zone and trying to do interesting things and trying to go on little adventures and see the world. I think that's a great thing when you do it for yourself. But then once you've got enough confidence and you feel comfortable, then, maybe you can take out a film crew. And I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but, going to Papua New Guinea and taking a film crew with you and making sure they stay motivated, making sure they stay safe, making sure that the work is getting done every day, making sure everyone's feeling healthy every day. You know, that is really where I think I excel in a lot of ways, because going out into these places and to become a leader of a small group of exceptionally talented people, is really hard when the conditions are hard, and they might have not had the experiences I've had when I'm 22, but still you need to keep them motivated. You need to give them a sense of safety. You need to give them a sense that we're all in this together, and those lessons have been just incredible to learn. So beyond just taking myself out into these places, I'm taking a camera crew. And then a few years ago, one of my friends who was a venture capitalist, he asked me to take him to Tibet. And I thought nothing of it. I was like, yeah, two friends going to Tibet. And we were out there for 6, 7 days, hiking through the mountains with a guide, and it was a wonderful experience. And he's just like, this has been so good for me because I've just had all these new, fresh ideas. You got me out of my office, you got me out of my house. Hiking for 8 hours a day in the mountains, like the fresh air. I'm getting all these new ideas about things I can do with my business or my family, different ways of living. And I just saw the light bulb go off in his head, and then I thought, wow, maybe these are experiences that other people might want to have. And so what I do is sometimes when I'm actually filming my TV shows, I'll bring some people along with me. They'll usually stay off camera, but they'll be there to kind of enjoy the experience and see the behind the scenes of how television shows are made. And then I also do some specific events, mostly here in the United States or in Europe, where I take a small group of people out and we walk across Death Valley, or we go hiking in the Swiss Alps or something like that for a multi-day trip, just to get people out of their comfort zone, get them out of their box, get them thinking differently, get them understanding their position in the world differently. Getting people out in nature is just so valuable. And that's a whole nother podcast. I could do 2 hours on that. Just the benefits of being outside, the benefits of sleeping with the natural rhythms of the earth, no artificial light, no artificial air conditioning, just nature, and how healthy that is and how beautiful that is. So this idea of bringing people out and just getting one light bulb at a time to go off and start, just bringing fresh ideas and fresh ways of life to people, I think is super important. Well, you can do that through rock climbing, or again, sitting at an ancient fire pit and sharing stories, or walking across Death Valley, or climbing in the Swiss mountains. But all those experiences are just wonderful, and I love interacting with people on a one-on-one basis as well, or in small groups, and I think too, like, you stand in front of an audience of 500 people at one of these corporate events, you don't really get to know anyone. Afterwards, you might have some of the C-suite people. They might have a drink with you later, but it's kind of closed off. You don't get a chance to really connect with the wider group. And that rock climbing idea, or that evening by the fire pit, or something outside in nature where you can connect with people in a different way, in a different environment, will really stimulate fresh ideas and really give people different perspectives. And I think that's the goal in any of this.
Well, I think in many ways, even a day hike in a place like Red Rock is like a sauna for your brain. It just completely flushes everything out. And then, Jackie, it's really fun to do a hike in Red Rock and then go back to the strip. You want to put a day in perspective. So one
Culture
last
shock.
thing, Ryan. So Jackie, did you want to say one other thing about how he creates interactivity in the event? Some things you might have seen other than, I love the idea, and we're going to mention taking people out on a local outdoor adventure appropriate to the group. But anything he might do at the event, Jackie, or do you want to finish up with that, Ryan?
I'm happy to let Jackie chime in if she wants, or I can jump in.
Go ahead, Ryan. You can finish it if you want.
Okay. Well, again, it's just trying to spend time with people in small groups or one-on-one after the events or during the events, I think is really valuable. Like, I've done a lot of speaking events in my career, and some people just want you to come in and do a quick hour and you're in and out and you don't get to meet anyone, which I think is just terrible, because I think, if people are going to spend time listening to you for an hour, talk about your experiences and what you can learn from those in a corporate environment or something like that, giving people the chance to communicate, with a speaker or something like that afterwards. I know some people might think that's very tedious, but actually that's where all the great stuff comes from. It's just, learning how your talk affects other people in a one-on-one situation or a small group situation, and then having the chance to let other people ask questions, because your 1 hour chat might have been amazing for the entire group of 500 people, but there might be a few people in there who have really, really specific questions about how you dealt with this kind of adversity or how you got through that situation in life. And those can be really, really beautiful moments for those individuals at the event. And not having time for that, or not building in time for that, I think is a real missed opportunity. And obviously, it's hard to spend time with individuals. If there's 500 people there, that's 500 people you need to shake hands with and have eye contact with and actually connect with on a human level. And that can be hard, but there needs to be some mechanism to break that down, because I love getting a chance to field these questions. I love getting a chance to kind of think about how the audience sees me, and that really is a Q&A process about what my presentation has been, but then also too, are there holes in it? Do they have more questions? Did I not address something specifically that this person wants? And having those kind of more authentic one-on-one experiences or small group experiences is just so important to continuing the purpose. I mean, the whole purpose I'm being invited to a corporate event is to share my experiences and how it can enrich the corporate environment or people's work environment or people's lives within the company and things like that. And not giving people a chance to ask their questions, or not getting a chance to connect with people in a more one-on-one or small group environment, I think is a real miss. So I really look forward to that, and I love meeting people and taking their questions and hearing their stories, and I think there can be a lot of inspiration that can come from those smaller groups or one-on-one sessions.
Well, Jackie, that's something that you and I have a big advocate for. And so, Jackie, I have an idea for Vegas. Let's come up with some short escapes that could be led by people like Ryan to special places, so that people,
Yes.
oh gosh, that's something we could maybe do, Ryan, literally create, package some experiences that you would be able to lead. That's something to think about. But one last thing, you've been generous with your time, but I want to ask you one last thing. If you, I don't know whether you have kids, I'm not into the personal stuff here, but if you're giving advice to a young person who comes to you and says, Ryan, I'm just coming out of college. I'm not, what advice could you give me to have a wonderful life? What advice would you give a young person today?
Get on an airplane right away and fly to a country that does not speak your native language. Step one.
Wow.
And by the
Yeah.
way, I did that, and it's the best advice, because after that first month of hell that I mentioned, it went from hell to heaven. All the
Yeah.
negative energy, because it was very depressing. Paris is not, it can be a very lonely city, right? If you don't speak the language, but then it turned into heaven. So basically, folks, that's the best advice I could give you. get out of your comfort zone and travel to a place where they don't speak your language. Ryan, there's so much wisdom here. Thank you so much for joining us. And this show will be live probably by next week. We'll be marketing it through all our media, and it will join our library of wisdom that we're building with you, Jackie, our meaningful meetings, lessons shared. We've got a growing number of great videos. Thanks again, Jackie and Ryan.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
Bruce.
much,
Thank you,
Bruce.
Jackie.
Thank you, Ryan.